Right. You guys, please continue. My bad on this. Apologies to all those who are waiting. Really sorry. Okay.
That's fine. That's fine. So apologies everyone. Yoti, the floor is yours.
It's still continuing to record, right? Please confirm that for me, Adi.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Thank you.
All right.
All right. All the best, Jyoti.
Okay. Yeah, guys. So we'll start. So this is going to be a very fundamental session today. So we plan to have multiple session. So the idea for part one is more of making you well aware about certain terms which we use in AWS, what are various services. Okay, and from today onwards, when we talk about AWS, now start thinking in terms of services, not servers. Okay, so everything we'll talk about, it is services which we are getting from the AWS. Okay, so you can see some of these services here, and we'll go further to understand what these services are meant to do. For example, Amazon RDS. So it is providing what kind of services to us, what is the role of Route 53. Okay, so this is a very theory session. Yeah. Okay. Oh god, my screen. Okay. So this is the agenda. We'll understand why we have cloud offerings, why customers are moving towards cloud computing, and because of which you see various AWS, Azure, GCP, they are providing you those cloud platforms now. And then we'll go over to understand AWS well architected framework. So you can consider this framework as a guiding principle. Okay, so like once you're moving from a traditional to a cloud native approach, so what are the things you can take care or and while implementing your architecture using AWS services, so that you can find make best use of AWS services. Okay, then I'll give you a little bit about, okay, what do we mean by region, what is VPC, what is AZs, which is availability zone. We'll also talk about edge locations. Okay, then next item would be I'll share what are various services. So currently, last when I read, I think Amazon has more than 200 services, but we don't need to know all those 200 services. There are some important services with to start with your journey of AWS. So there are some 30-40 AWS services which you should know, and then I'll give you an example. Okay, so theory, it's good, but we should know how we can leverage these services in developing our architecture. Okay, so why cloud computing? So first reason for going in cloud is it you move from capital expenses to variable expenses. So it is like capex versus opex. So what is capital expenses? It is one time expense which you have to do while setting up your application. So you purchase your servers, okay, then you have to maintain it, you need to ensure that there is enough cooling, then you need to have some network engineers or admin to take care of the patching, etc. So with Amazon, all those responsibilities are gone. You are mostly you are given a service. Now it's up to you how you use it. Okay, you don't have to worry about patching of those data centers, of making as simple as ensuring that, okay, you have got cold environment. Okay, there is not heat, things are not heating up, or you need to replace the faulty devices. You don't have to take care of routers, switches, anything of those you don't have to take care of. Okay, second is increase agility. Okay, so what do we mean by increase agility? So now we are having a lot of startups. Okay, so if you want to go live quickly, so you can leverage AWS services and you can go live. Okay, which was something which used to take a lot of time, because all the purchasing was required. You had to guess your capacity, even you were not sure, like, okay, the application or the idea on which you are building your application, how useful is it going to be for the customer, how much traffic you'll get. Okay, so yeah, so the next point is also talking about same thing, that you don't have to guess about the capacity. Okay, and then you can go global in a minute. Okay, provisioning your servers using AWS, it is very quick. Okay, you'll later in this slide, I'll talk about AWS Cloud Formation. So which would tell you, okay, so you create a template, okay, and now if there is, you want to set up same thing again, you just need to use that template to provision your servers, okay. There are some more points which I haven't written in these slides, which is like scalability, okay. For example, prior to my current organization, I was in Payu, which was a payment aggregator. So there we used to get a lot of traffic during the Big Billion Sale. Okay, there are various sales which you have Mintra, and then there used to be IPL. Okay, so that time also we used to get a lot of traffic because of Dream 11. So that time what we used to do, we used to provision our servers only for those peak type, rather focusing on those provisioning or making it auto scale, etc. All the time we had to just focus during those sale type. Okay, yeah. So next, let's talk about what is AWS Well Architecture Framework. So as I mentioned, it's a general guiding principle. Okay, so they talk about 5 pillars. The first one is operational excellence, followed by security, reliability, performance efficiency, and cost optimization. So all these are related. You'll understand in the upcoming slide how one helps in getting another. For example, if you have operational excellence, okay, if you're able to set up things quickly, okay, then that would help you to optimize your cost. Yeah. Yeah. So first is operational excellence. So when you talk about this pillar, it focuses mainly on automation and observability. Sorry for that. Okay. So the operational excellence pillar focuses on how you can continuously improve your ability to run systems, create better procedures, and gain insight. Okay, so by automation you mean you want to avoid all the manual intervention of provisioning your servers. Okay, you want everything to be automated. So for that, AWS offers you one service, which is AWS Cloud Formation, wherein you write about your entire architecture. Okay, how many EC2 instances you are going to have, how many I mean, what is your load balance, or how many S3 buckets you'll have. All this you'll provision using Cloud Formation. So you write it in YAML format, all those things. Okay, and if there is any issue, if there is any disaster, okay, and you want to make your server up again, so you just need to use this Cloud Formation service to enable your application. Okay, then okay, so when thinking about operational excellence in the cloud, it is useful yeah, so here we are talking more about automation, how you can automate all those provisioning of services. Okay, and now when we talk about observability, so what does that mean? Okay, you cannot improve anything if you can't measure it. So AWS provides you certain services which helps you to measure. Okay, so those services are like your AWS CloudWatch, CloudTrail. So if there is anything which is happening in your AWS account, so you can find out using AWS CloudTrail services. Okay, so then what is AWS CloudWatch? It helps you to monitor those EC2 instances to see, okay, what is my CPU utilization? Okay, if the CPU utilization is getting more than 50%, okay, now we should start auto scaling. Okay, if there is any EC2 instances which has become faulty, okay, we need to enable another EC2 instances. So all those things you can do it using AWS CloudWatch. Okay, then there's another service, Athena. So you'll see like, okay, we have a S3 which is used for storing objects. So if you want to understand, suppose you've host any application which and lot of contents you have saved in S3. Now you want to analyze, okay, what kind of a content are being stored in your S3 bucket, and what are the things which are being fetched a lot. Okay, so if you want to do a SQL operation on your S3 bucket, you can use Athena. Then you have your Redshift. So if you want to go for data warehousing, okay, so you can use Redshift. Okay, next, security. Okay, so when you're talking about security using this guiding principle, go by this term, like, okay, zero trust. So you're not going to trust anything which is happening on a cloud. So for that, what you'll do, you'll add security at every level in the cloud, starting from who can access your account. So you'll study about IAM, which is identity and access management service. Okay, so this talks about, give, if you're not sure, okay, suppose we are 17 attendee here in the session, and I'm not sure what privileges I need to give it to Gaurav. Okay, so I'll go by the term least privilege, the minimum privilege I give him, so that he can perform his basic actions. Okay, then second is your network security. Okay, so this will have a detailed session on network security, but for now you can understand that, okay, you have this route table wherein you specify, okay, who all can access my application. Okay, suppose you have you have your web application, then you have got DB, so you don't want user to access your database. Okay, so what do, you make it private. Okay, but now same, since your DB, you've made it private. Okay, so you cannot connect with the internet directly, but there would be a requirement wherein you want to patch your DB service. Okay, so what are those services which helps you perform these kind of actions? Okay, then data encryption. So when we talk about a cloud, we have to ensure that our data, both which is at rest and which is in transit, both are secure, both are encrypted. So what are various services AWS offers for these? They are like AWS WAF, which is kind of a firewall, you can understand for now. Then you have AWS Shield. Okay, this is for your DDoS attack. Okay, then MFA token. Okay, you want to encrypt certain things, so for that you need to generate tokens. So what are the services which you can use? So you can use MFA token. Then there is AWS Cloud HSM. Okay, then there is KMS. For example, you want to encrypt data which is stored in your EC2 instances or S3 bucket or EBS. So all those you can encrypt using KMS. Guys, are you able to follow till now? Do you want me to repeat anything? Okay, I'll take that as no for now. Okay. Now, next is reliability. So when thinking about reliability in the cloud, it is useful to think in terms of blast radius. So I read a line. So reliability is now what you should do to avoid failures. Here, when we talk about reliability, it's like, okay, when that failure has happened, what are the things you can do to prevent the cascading effect? Okay, so now AWS talks about 2 points, which is fault isolation. Okay, how can you limit your fault to cascade to different layers? Example, in Amazon, you would have heard, okay, there is a VPC. Okay, there is your region, there is your availability zone. Okay, so how you have to ensure that, okay, fault is not getting cascaded. Then limits. Okay, so the limits is your service quota. Okay, how much traffic your EC2 can handle. Okay, so yeah, here are some of the examples of those services. So you have got service limit. Again, CloudWatch you are seeing here, because through CloudWatch you can understand, okay, you call your system faulty, or it's a alarming condition when you see, okay, there is a more than 80% of CPU utilization. Okay, now performance efficiency. Okay, so in performance efficiency, it's like, okay, you've got a hell lot of services, you've got 200 plus services, and now you have to select and scale. Okay, so you have to ensure that as per your requirement, what are the things you should choose. Okay, for example, I've given here, like, if you want to use EBS, so what is that requirement for which EBS is good? Okay, so if you want your data to persist, okay, even if your EC2 instance has terminated, but you want your data to persist, so for that you can go for EBS, and then there is this option, you can say, okay, retain my data on termination, or don't. If you don't want to retain your data on termination, you just have to uncheck that option. Okay, now if EFS. So all these, what you see in the bold, these are again AWS services. So if you want to share same data across multiple clients, so what is that service which you can use? It's EFS. Okay, anything which you want to store for as an object, go for S3 bucket. So the idea about selection is based on your requirements, select the services. Okay, now you've selected your services. Now you need to go for scaling. So now there are two types of scaling: vertical scaling, okay, so which is like increasing your RAM, etc. Horizontal is you're having more EC2 instances. So again, you have to understand when you want to go for vertical scaling and when you want to go for horizontal scaling. Okay, and you'll see, like here I have mentioned a lot of things, lot of services on purpose, because again, as I started this slide, like going on cloud helps you to minimize your one-time cost, which we called as capex, and focus on opex, which is pay as you go. Okay, so for that, Amazon offers a lot of services. For example, you want to understand, okay, you've provisioned your services, now you want to understand, like, okay, how, I think I'll log into the AWS and I'll show you, like you, based on your usage, your you are what do you say, you pay money based on your usage. So you want to understand, like, okay, what are the services you are using a lot? Okay, you've provisioned 10 servers, but you are just using 4 of them, 6 are not being used. So all these details you can find using these services which I have mentioned. If you want to go for a very detailed or minute level of information about your expenditure, so expenditure is the services which you are using, so you can use AWS cost and usage report. Okay, then there are certain cost effective resources. Okay, so for example, Spot instance, there are various types of AWS instances. So you have got on demand, pay, Spot, reserve. Okay, so Spot instances is like, you can go for Spot instances if you are okay that there is some interruption. Okay, you're doing some POC or you're doing some testing. So for that, even if your services, they stop to work, you're fine. Okay, for that case, you can use Spot instance. So how do you get such instances? Like, you have to bid, and based on the highest bid, you get the server. But if there is another client, somebody else comes up and who's ready to offer more than what you are paying, so they take your instances. So they give you 2 minutes of notification and then they take those instances. So you have to be very careful also while choosing the services. Okay, then in S3, like object storage, there are various types of S3 buckets. Like, you have got standard, you have got one zone, you have got infrequent, then there is AWS Glacier, then AWS Deep Glacier. So what are these? So they are different. They help you to store your object, but you take them based upon how frequently you want to access your data. For example, you have history of the cricket matches. Okay, so you know some match which has happened in, say, 1980. You're not going to use it that frequently. Okay, you'll use it just one. Someone might use it uh, in, say, 3 years. Somebody might go and ask for such kind of a data. Okay, or for example, those music videos, you have got some old music songs and players which are there. So these TCDs, etc., what they do, they use Amazon S3 Glacier as their for storage. Okay, so since their retrieval time is a lot, like it takes 8 to 12 hours, so their cost is less. Okay, but the standard S3 object storage, for there is like, okay, the access and retrieval is very fast, so you have to pay accordingly. Okay, yeah, matching supply and demand. Okay, here I was giving you that example. Okay, during you want to go for more servers during any peak season. Okay, so then go for these auto scaling. And now Amazon is going for these serverless services, which is like AWS Lambda or DynamoDB. So wherein they say, okay, don't worry about the infrastructure, we'll take care of everything for you. Okay, And Amazon has one more thing which we call it as economic of scale. So it's like more you use it, they'll cost you less. Okay. Then optimize over time. So there's these services, AWS Trusted Advisor. So you can scan your account using these trusted advisor, and then they can tell you, okay, they'll give you better option, how to use same thing using a better resources. Okay. So till now, we were just discussing about the guiding principle. Okay. So there were 5 pillars which we discussed, which were like scalability, reliability, operational excellence, cost optimization. Okay. Now we'll understand some basic terms of AWS. Okay. So first and foremost is VPC. So what is VPC? It's like your virtual private cloud. Okay. So if you go by traditional approach, so whenever you're hosting your application, you define a IP address, okay, which would correspond to your application, and you open certain port. Okay, so using this port only, your application can be accessed. So what is that in Amazon? That's your VPC. Okay. Then regions. So when we say cloud, what exactly you mean by cloud? It's your data center only. Earlier that data center was in your premise, but now that data center is across country. They are geographically located in various regions. Okay. Yeah. Now this part which you see, this is your one region. For example, in India, it's Mumbai region, okay, where you have your data center. Now under Mumbai, you'll have 2-3 more data centers which we called as availability zone. Okay, so why we have kept 2-3 AZs in one region? In case of support, and the data in all these AZs are same. Okay, so this is like redundant data which you've stored in all those AZs. So the idea is, okay, if in case of any disaster recovery or power outage, if one AZ goes down, you can enable your traffic to another AZ. Okay. So a little bit about networking on that, like they are connected with high bandwidth. So what are they? Availability zones. So they are connected by high bandwidth, ultra low latency. Okay. And then there is one more concept, which is edge location, which I have not mentioned here. So edge locations are your, like they are used for caching. Okay, so you suppose there's some video which gets very popular. Okay, so we want to ensure that people sitting in US can also access it with low latency, and people from India also can access it. So then you store those videos at those edge locations, so that user get low latency and a better experience. Yeah. Okay, let me just, out of interest, let me show you this links to you guys. Yeah, so these are your services. Okay, so you have AWS services under compute. Okay, so during this slide, I would have talked about AWS EC2 instance a lot. So that comes under compute. Okay, for storage, you have got your S3. Okay, then you have got RDS, DynamoDB. For caching, you've got your CloudFront. Okay, Elastic Cache. So all these are under. So you can see there are so many services which Amazon is offering you across various options like compute, storage, databases, networking. Okay, route table, which I was talking about. So it's like when you go to a Amazon account after this session, so on the left hand side you can see you'll see things like route table, you'll see like EC2 instances, then you'll see AMI, EBS. So you'll see a lot of stuff there. Okay. Okay, so I was preparing for first AWS Cloud Practitioner exam. So I just wanted to know, okay, how does data center looks like? So I was very curious. So just found one picture to show it to you guys, like how does your AWS data center looks like. So there also there's, so this is the data center from Mumbai region. So you can see, okay, all these are your devices. So earlier these things you would have seen, they used to be kept in your office. There used to be one room which used to be locked. And if you used to enter in that room, it used to be very cold and all. So what were those? Those are your data centers. Now everything is managed by AWS. You don't have to take care of all these things. Okay. Then there was another link. Yeah. So one of the largest data centers. Yeah. Okay. So this up, where's the picture? Yeah. So this is the data center in Virginia. So let's get slides. Okay. Yeah. A little bit of, let's do a recap. Okay, so we read about why I'm doing a recap again and again, because this is something some of you would be listening for the first time. So I just want to make sure that, okay, you retain some term. If you don't retain the concept, but if you retain the term, that would also do. Okay, and we'll go in depth on those topics in our subsequent webinars. Okay, so first what we talked about is, okay, why we are going for cloud computing. So you understood, okay, it offers you you can go global in a minute. Okay, then you pay as you go, so you don't have to think about your one-time setup. It's all about, okay, whatever you'll use, you'll pay for it. Okay, because earlier it's like, okay, you bought up 10 servers, but you didn't get that much of a traffic, but you end up paying for those 10 servers. Here now that's not the case. You pay what you use. Okay, then there is concept of scalability. You can do scaling, vertical scaling, horizontal scaling. Okay, and then we talked about the 5 pillars, which were like operational excellence. So if we talk about operational excellence, it's more of how you can automate. Okay, manually you can provision. Okay, now you can go ahead and manually you can have one EC2 instance set up in your account. Okay, but if you want to do same thing again and again, you don't want that manual intervention, because with manual intervention, human errors are possible. So you want to automate it. For that, what do we use? AWS Cloud Formation. Okay, then we talked about reliability, then security. So when you talk about security, it's like you have to ensure that your data, which is at rest and which is in transit, both are secure. So for that, Amazon provides you services like MFA token. Okay, then you have your cloud HSM. So all these, then you have KMS. Yeah, and then we talked about cost optimization. So before going on cloud also, you want to know what is going to be your expense. Okay, so there are certain services which helps you to find out those costs. Then there are certain services, once you are on the cloud and you want to understand, okay, how you're doing in the cloud, are you really using the services which you have provisioned? Okay, or how can you reduce the cost? Okay, if you see there is some data which your user is not accessing it that frequently, so instead of storing it in Amazon S3 standard storage, you can go for Glacier or Deep Glacier. Okay, then if you're not sure, okay, there could be a situation wherein you're not sure if the client or your customer is going to use this data or not. So there's another service which is there in S3, which is, I think it is called as intelligent tier. So it based upon if it is accessed, if that object is accessed, it puts into standard S3. Okay, if it is not accessed, it puts it into infrequent storage. Okay, and then after that we went ahead and we understood some basic terms like, okay, what do we mean by VPC, what do you mean by region, what do you mean by edge location, what is availability zone. Okay, now we are going to talk about the scope of those services. Okay, I have listed just few. Okay, so all the services which I showed you in that picture, or what I talked during discussion of our pillars, so all these have a scope. For example, your IAM, identity and access management service, it is scope for your AWS account. Okay, in fact, billing. For example, once you have your AWS account, you can deploy your services in various regions, but the bill which you will get, it would be a combined bill. Okay. Then if you talk about region, so S3 is the scope of S3 is your region. So when you go ahead and create a S3 bucket, you'll get an option to select S3. Okay. Then you have got your EC2, EBS, RDS. So they are tied to your AZs. Okay. Yeah. So till now we've understood some of the services. Now let's take an example of, I've taken a sample example of a social media platform, say FB. This is not actually FB, but I wanted to explain you all how the various services fit into your traditional architecture. So I've taken this example. So let's start. Okay. So first of all, when you deploy your application, you have your private network, right? So this is the boundary which you see is that of your private network. Okay. Now, so this we are talking about FB. Okay, a very small application. So you wrote a code, for example, you wrote it in PHP. So you will deploy using a web server. Okay, so this is your VM, and there was some storage. So for that you have this disk. Okay, now you decided, so this is like more of your front end. You used your web servers for front end. Then you decided, okay, I need to have some logic, I need to have some APIs. Okay, so then you went ahead and created another server, and you deployed your those APIs on that server. Okay, then so there is a 3-tier architecture. You have your front end, your business logic, and then your storage. So you wanted to store certain things also, for example, your user data, etc. For that you use database. Okay, so this is how, when we started, we had one VM, we had one web server, we had one app server which was able to take care of 100 users. Okay, and then we had one relational database. Okay, now you saw, okay, now your application was doing really good, there's more demand, so you thought, okay, let me add more servers. Okay, so you went ahead and you added 2 VMs. Sorry, I'm saying VM again. Okay, so you added 2 web servers. Similarly, you added 2 app servers. Okay, now since you've got multiple servers, you wanted entity which could help you balance the request. So you wanted to distribute the load. So for that, what did you do? You went ahead and added a load balancer. Okay, so far it's good. You have got 2 VM because there was more transaction on your application. Okay, you have DB. Then you later in the process you realize, okay, there are some data for which your relational database is not enough. Let me go for a NoSQL DB. Okay, so you added one NoSQL DB. Again, in the process, you found out that you are getting a lot of read requests on your relational database. There are a lot of users, they are trying to access some data from the DB. So you decided, instead of these VM directly accessing your relational database, okay, let's add a caching layer. So you added a DB cache. So the frequently used query now would be catered from these DB caches. Okay, this is good. And again, when you access FB, right, so you don't all these in networking, how do you identify each component? Using IP addresses. Okay, so when we started creating this application, we were using a IP address, public IP address. But now, since we started getting a lot of users, we decided we'll have a domain name. Okay, so you used a DNS, like, okay, Cloud Daddy, all those things, and you now, instead of having that public IP address, you are using your site with this name, fb.com. Okay, so let's understand this again. So you have a user would type fb.com in your browser. Okay, based on the load, your load balancer would divide it. Okay, then you are doing some compute. There is some APIs which is being used. For that, you have app server. Then you see, okay, there is a lot of read requests to your DB. So instead of sending request to DB, we have added a DB cache. Okay, Now, when you go to Facebook, you see a lot of advertisements. Okay, you keep seeing. If you saw something on one site and you come to FB, you start seeing those advertisements. Okay, so now FB starts to keep track of those things, like, okay, what user is clicking and all those things. So that is known as clickstream analysis. Okay, why it is being used to understand the users behavior, like, okay, what kind of a thing users are mostly seeing or purchasing. Okay, so all these you want to store it somewhere. You don't want to bombard this, so you decided you'll have some external storage. So here is that storage which we have added. Now on that storage, you want to do some computation, some aggregation. Okay, so for that you added Hadoop. Okay, now at the end of the year, if FB wants to understand, okay, user pattern, and based on user pattern, the FB wants to have introduce certain features, etc. So all these data, what FB is doing, it is storing it in data warehouse, and using some business intelligence tool, it would depict this data in a graphical manner. For example, Tableau, Power BI. Okay, yeah, so we have this part. We've got a name to our application, which is fb.com. We've added multiple servers to, and then we have added load balancer so that traffic can be distributed. We avoided our DB being bombarded with a lot of read requests, so we added a DB cache. Then we were getting some we wanted to track those clicks, so we went ahead and we started storing those clicks in a external storage. We wanted to do some computation on those storage, so we added Hadoop, and all those things we are storing in data warehouse so that we can derive some meaningful information. Okay, now okay, so you get a lot of friend notifications also from FB. Okay, so for that, what we've used, you have used SMS, so mobile push notification, which you get once there is certain action on your Facebook. Okay, just for understanding purpose, for chatting, suppose we added a messaging queue. Okay, and then FB sending you a lot of email. Okay, if somebody sends any comment, okay, likes your post something, you get a notification in your email. So for that, you are using some email services. Okay, okay, apart from this, there are a lot of things which we are posting daily on the FB. Okay, so for that, we decided we'll have a external storage for same reason. Okay, we don't want to bombard this and store everything here. So we decided we'll have an external storage. Okay, but we wanted to ensure that we don't end up keeping some obscene things. Okay, so we added some content filters, okay, which ensure that, okay, only authentic stuff are being stored. Okay, now this is for your, if somebody is accessing your FB using a browser, but now you see there are a lot of users which are going to access these videos, advertisements, etc., using mobile. Okay, so now you want to store these objects, I mean, you want to make it mobile friendly. Okay, so what you do, you use those external, those data, pictures, video, you convert it into a format which is suitable for mobile user. Okay, and then you store it here. Yeah, so this is your one small architecture. Okay, now you want to ensure that, yeah, everything is set up and you want to do continuous monitoring, so you add something here which is your monitoring dashboard. Okay, one more thing, yeah, which I was talking about, content delivery network. Okay, so again, if there is some video which gets very viral, okay, so again you'll start seeing a lot of users sending requests to this external storage. Okay, so since the number of user would increase, you won't be able to serve it very quickly. So what we do, we use something called as content delivery network. Okay, so this is your traditional architecture. Okay, now let's see how all this fit into your AWS services. Yeah, so the VMs, web servers, which I was showing you there, it is replaced by your EC2 instance. Okay, the disk is replaced by your elastic block storage. Okay, Now, when we decided to go for scaling, like from 1 to 2 servers, now in future we might want to go and have 10 servers. Okay, so you need some kind of a scaling mechanism. So for that you have AWS auto scaling. Okay, then yeah, so we had a relational database, right, where we were storing all your queries, etc. So for this, sorry, this is not showing up properly. Yeah, so this is your Amazon RDS. Then we had also added a NoSQL data in our previous slide. See, this was your NoSQL data. So this has been replaced by your DynamoDB. Okay, then I had added a DB cache in between. Why? Because I don't want it, so it was simple. There was read queries which we were getting, right? So instead of this servers hitting this DB directly, I introduced something which is DB cache. So DB cache is replaced by Elastic Cache service. Okay, till here are you able to follow? You have your, okay, your web servers have been replaced by EC2. The small disk which I was showing, it has been replaced by your EBS. We wanted to do auto scaling based upon the load, so we went for this auto scaling service. For relational database, we are using your Amazon RDS. For NoSQL, we are using DynamoDB. For cache, we went ahead and used Elastic Cache. Okay, now since now you'll start getting a lot of traffic, and you want to ensure that the load is distributed equally. Okay, so for that, here I have added load balancer, right? So what is load balancer in Amazon? That's your ELB. Okay, now you had this DNS, domain name system, okay, which gave you a name, meaningful name to your IP address. Okay, so here it has been replaced by Amazon Route 53. Okay, yeah, so although click, which we were trying to user clicks in action, so for that, what is that service which helps you to track those? It's Kinesis. For external storage, what do you have? Your S3. See, you had a click stream analysis, then you were storing your data somewhere. So what is it is helping you to store those data using AWS service? It's S3. Then Hadoop, where you wanted to do some computation on these data. Okay, you're storing something, right? You want to derive some meaning out of it. So what is that service? It's EMR. Amazon EMR, which helps you to do those computation. If you've heard about Hadoop or Spark, so EMR is equivalent to that. Yeah. For data warehousing, we are using Redshift. Okay. Now from this, we wanted to give a pictorial representation. So what can you use? There you were using Power BI or Tableau. So now you can use QuickSight. Okay. Yeah, now let's come to these, like somebody is posting videos, etc. Okay, so we want to filter the content. We don't want to store an objectional thing. Okay, so there would be some kind of filtering. Okay, so it's done by recognition service of AWS. So it does the filtering, it stores in S3. Now you wanted to make that video or post mobile compatible. Okay, so for that you could have used EC2 instance also. So what this EC2 instance would have done, it would have seen if there is any data in S3, it would have converted it into a mobile friendly application, and then it would have stored in this S3. But instead of going for EC2 instances, you can also use AWS Lambda, which is a serverless service. So what do we mean by serverless services? Like you just deploy your code. I mean, you just write the logic. You don't have to have one EC2 instance and add all those security groups, routing, etc. It's just that you write your code. Now AWS Lambda would take care of the conversion. Okay. In previous picture, I showed you something known as content delivery network, which is used for serving your static content. So in AWS, what is that service? It's CloudFront. So CloudFront has these edge locations, which helps you to do those CDN part, which was mentioned there. Okay. Now request would come to a CloudFront, and then CloudFront would distribute it. Okay, I need to take user to this edge location or this edge location. Okay. And okay, there's one more part which I didn't cover in previous slides. So now you have two kind of user, one which are coming through web browser and the other which are coming through mobile. So authentication could be different for these two types of user. So what is that service of AWS which you can use is Cognito. Yeah, there's the service AWS Cognito which helps you for user authentication. Yeah, so this was the inside part. Okay, now we were discussing about the notification which your FB sends you. Okay, so for that, what is that service which you use? It's SNS. Okay, your mobile push notification. So Amazon SNS you're using. If you want to send a bulk email, okay, so you can use your simple email service of Amazon. Okay, for messaging, for example, we had a messaging queue. Okay, so that has been replaced by your SQS in Amazon. Okay, now all these things you want to monitor. Okay, you need to have some monitoring. Okay, so what is that service which helps you to do the monitoring in Amazon? It's AWS CloudWatch. And here you can see there is alarm also, so you can set certain alarm. Okay, there's your CPU usage is more than 50%, so send an alarm. There are certain alarms which are like, okay, it performs action also. Okay, if there is the CPU usage is more than 50%, go ahead and have one more EC2 instance. Yeah. So there are a lot of services, but I try to cover the important one. Okay. So yeah, you can see this picture again. Your clickstream, external storage, business intelligence, monitoring dashboard. So whatever you had here are being provided by Amazon using these services. That's it from my end, guys. Any questions? I know this was a lot of theory. In part 2, we'll go ahead and do something hands-on. Okay. Should I stop sharing? Hey, guys, hello.
Hi, we can hear you.
Okay, I thought lecture was very boring. Everybody slept.
No, it's not boring, and no one is sleeping. There's been a lot of conversation going on in the chat actually.
Okay.
Yeah. Does anyone have any question? If you type it out now, and then we'll take a few questions, please.
I can see a bunch of questions on the chat window.
I can't see any questions. It's just conversation that I could see there. So
okay, so let me read out a question that I see here. Jyoti Chandraban Pandey is asking you what we mean by vertical and horizontal scaling.
Oh, okay. I was going through the chat. I think Gaurav has answered, but yeah, Chandraban. So as how Gaurav is mentioned, vertical scaling is like you're increasing the RAM, etc. of your server, and horizontal is you're adding one more server. Okay, so that's your horizontal scaling. Okay.
Okay, how are these data centers 24/7 on uninterrupted power or downtime?
Yeah, so they have those generators also. Like in case there is a power outage, they have their generators which are turned on ASAP. So to avoid these power outage, etc.
So I have personally seen Facebook data center. Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, British. Yes.
Yeah, so I have personally seen a Facebook data center, and it was, I don't know how many acres of solar panels was there installed to make it going, only dedicated to that data center. That's one way. The other way is, of course, through the normal electric grid connection. So it has, so that the data centers have a separate connection from the grid, and then they also make, other backup arrangements like generators and stuff. Okay, there is a question. I don't know if Gaurav can explain this question. Is it prepaid? How the payment happens? Wallet load kind of. What does that mean, Gaurav? I do not know. You can, I don't know if you can unmute yourself and ask your question, Gaurav.
Oh, okay. Saying if I use 50 GB or 500 GB, is it postpaid? Okay, Gaurav, I'm not aware of this, if it's prepaid or postpaid. But what I understand is you are charged based on how much you use. For example, if you're using a Linux instance, so you will be charged per second. Okay, so if you go to AWS site, they would have given you like the amount money you have to pay per second for using certain services. But if you're using a Windows server, okay, for that you are charged per hour. But this part I'm not sure, like, are you charged in a bulk? That I'm not aware. I'll check in and I'll get back to you.
So most of the payments is bucketed nowadays, because what they do is, depending on the size that you are claiming, or the space that you're claiming, okay, so you are charged based on that. So they have generally plans, like for example 100 GB, then 500 GB, and then 1 terabyte, 2 terabytes, and so on and so forth. So then they have these plans which have, like, you know bundles of services that they offer with each plan. And the higher you go, the more you purchase, the more services you get along with that. And this is mostly in two forms, whether you can pay monthly or in an annual payment. So if you make annual payments, your price, you generally get some kind of a discount, varies from 5% to somewhere up to 20% in some instances, which is quite cool. And you see such pricing also available for the storage plans that are offered by, say, for example, Google, or even for any other services where you need storage. So even your iCloud, Apple also, okay, so they also give you similar plans. So that's how the money or the payment part is structured. I hope that helps, Jyoti, Gaurav. Okay, then there is another question. You explained about the pillars which are used to design the architecture. Can you explain how the pillars are used with the fb.com slide for AWS?
Shiva, probably I'll park this question for our next session. Okay, when we'll understand more. So I've covered very few services. So in upcoming session, I'll keep a note of this question and we'll come back to it. Okay.
There was another question from Gaurav, which I saw. Gaurav was asking, some lines are dotted in the fb.com architecture. Why? What do the dotted lines represent, Jyoti?
Oh, they are just flow of data, just to demarcate, like, okay, how data is flowing. I've added, okay, there are some solid lines and there's no meaning behind it. It's just for demarcation.
Okay, since I don't see any other question, I have a question for you, Jyoti. So
Okay.
how are we taking care of our security requirements within AWS? So how do we make sure that, okay, if we say, for example, if we are using a particular AWS instance for
Hmm.
whatever service that we are using it for,
Mhm.
how are we making sure that it is secure? Now, I'll give you a background to this question. Okay, so
Mhm.
a few months ago, I was working on a project where we were required to create a gateway for, you know, for dealing with the transactions of data coming in from electron microscopes
Mhm.
back in China. So the problem was that we could relay this information over internet, but we did not know where to store them, and even if we knew how to store them, we were not sure if they would be secure. So
Mhm.
multiple cloud providers were reached out to, and they were validated, and finally, of course, it was a business decision to go with AWS then, and then to build another layer on top of it. But that's a different story. That is a different part of the architecture that they were dealing with.
Mhm.
So my question is, I mean, considering AWS, considering that it is very safe, very sound,
Mhm.
um, how are the security requirements being met?
Okay, so I'll try to answer best of my knowledge what I have. Okay, so with AWS, when we talk about security, like there are shared responsibility. There are some responsibility which lies on the customer, and there are some which is with AWS. Okay, so for example, as a customer or user of AWS, what all we can do is, for example, if we are having one EC2 instance, okay, so we can ensure, okay, what kind of a port we are opening. Okay, are we opening port 80, or so there's this concept of security group, which is kind of, you can say, firewall in layman language. So one is there, you are telling, okay, which, on which port your application can be accessed. Okay, then there are a lot of other services. For example, you have uh, uh, I think ACL, if I remember correctly. So using that service, you tell both, okay, what is allowed to come in to your application and what can go out of your application. So these are certain things which you can do. Okay, then you have got your routing tables, wherein you mention, okay, data can, I mean, you can access your application publicly, or you cannot access your application publicly. Then they have got these AWS WAF, again it's a firewall. Then you have got AWS Shield. So I've personally not used these things, but I've read about them. So all these are also there to provide you that security. Okay, if you see that, okay, there is a same request you are getting from a single account. Okay, there's some user who's trying to access your EC2 instance. Okay, so there is this AWS Shield, etc. They'll send you those alerts. Okay, and they'll tell you, okay, there is some kind of activity which is happening on your EC2 instances. So there are these services which AWS provide you for security. Then there's this concept of KMS. Okay, if you want, Brijesh, that your data has to be, if anybody tries to interrupt your data, so the person should not able to understand what is that data all about. You want some kind of encryption. So you can go ahead and use their KMS service, so which helps you to encrypt your data which is at rest.
Okay, yeah, no, I think that's a great explanation, and yes, Gaurav, while working on certain applications with Azure, we've made use of the ASA feature, the security advisor. That's a good functionality with or a feature that Azure provides. Even GCP also has its own security protocol. So I was just wondering from AWS side what it is. Thank you, Jyoti, for that explanation. I think that is really helpful. Do we have any other questions? I
Yeah,
don't
in
see any.
fact,
So over to you.
Brijesh, sorry to interrupt. So
Sorry, go ahead.
even AWS has AWS Trusted Advisor. Okay, so even this helps you in your cost optimization, performance, security, fault tolerance. So looks like what Gaurav has written about Azure Security Advisor. I think Amazon's Trusted Advisor is also on the same lines.
Yeah, I know, and even for IBM Cloud, they have this advisor service which also covers multiple portfolios, including performance, security, and budgeting and finance and stuff like that. So I think most of these cloud providers operate on similar models, at least from a strategy point of perspective. So, but this is valuable information, Jyoti. Thank you. Uh, Addy, over to you. Enough of my questions. Addy, you're mute. He got so bored with my questions. Addy, are you there? Okay, there is one more question that is from Jainam. Is there any service by AWS for Kafka?
Yeah, I think there is, but I don't remember the name. Probably you can go to the Amazon site, Janam, and you can find out. I read somewhere, I think they have a service for Kafka as well. But I don't remember its name. Sorry about that.
Okay, I am not sure if Addy is there. Addy?
Okay.
All right. I don't know. I will try to switch on my camera for a minute. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I am in two places. There are there are laptops everywhere all around me. So I'm going a bit crazy. But anyways, thank you, Jyoti. I think that was really good information, a great start. We definitely look forward to the subsequent episodes of your series. In the meantime, I will see what the problem is with the sharing, because by default the panelist sharing should be enabled. I don't know if I have to make some changes in the settings for the Zoom webinar page. So this was just a new setup, and we have not. This is the second event, so I've not had to experiment much. But I will definitely try and fix it for next time so that you don't have this problem. And I really appreciate the patience of all the attendees because there was too much of a delay. My apologies. Sincerely, I value everyone's time, and I really appreciate you hanging around. It was a great topic. It is a great topic. A lot of action is happening in the cloud area. From a tester's perspective, I hope the subsequent webinars will take us on a journey which will help us all excel as testers. Wonderful webinar. Thank you, Jyoti, once again. Thank you to all the attendees. As soon as the recording is edited, I will upload it on the TTC channel, and we could have a recap. So in the meantime, Jyoti, you and I will plan on the subsequent episodes. Let's also make the audience aware when is the next episode coming, so that they also can prepare. And what we can also do is, as a part of this, ask the audience to get some preparation, get some homework done. Shiva is asking, is this going to be a weekly or a monthly event? Well, on this particular series, Jyoti and I have been talking about it. We are planning the episodes. We will let you know the schedule very soon, Shiva. Everybody will come to know. We will try and publish the entire schedule so that everybody is prepared. And if there are any homework, or if there is any kind of homework, any kind of research that needs to be done by the audience, then you guys can come prepared. Also, it gives a lot of boost to Jyoti as well, because she knows that the audience is prepared and excited. And of course, you can share it with your friends as well. Okay, so on that note,
may I quickly say something, please?
Yeah, please. I thought you went. I thought
No,
you
I
meant
wasn't anyway.
feedback.
I dropped my headphones. Please,
And
to
now you're
others,
listening through your head. Wow.
yeah. So all the attendees, thank you so much. But I would also request that you give feedback in the community group, so we know, because this is an ongoing series. I need to hear as many feedback from you guys as possible. It helps us to make sure we deliver these things better. And thanks to our teacher today. We hope to keep this going. Thank you so much, Brijesh, to
Yeah,
attend eventually.
I don't know if I have said this to you, Jyoti, but you not only look like a teacher, but you are a very good teacher.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, she is actually a good teacher.
So you are really good. So keep up the great work, and we hope to have many more webinars from you in the days
Okay.
to come.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
you so much, guys.
Okay. Bye, guys. Happy Friday. Bye.
Yeah.
Jyoti, you are the host, so you will have to end the.
Yeah. I'll do it. Bye, Brajesh. Bye.
Bye.